I'm Delilah Grant, 32 years old, living and working in Minneapolis. Since I was a child, I've grown used to being on the sidelines of my own family. Family gatherings, parties, those moments people call together time, I was rarely invited. Every time I asked why, my mom would give a half-hearted smile. "You're busy, right? With that computer job of yours?" That computer job, she always mocked, was the career I loved and had spent nearly 10 years building, a digital content strategist at a growing media company. I worked hard, earned a stable income, enough to buy my own apartment and make small real estate investments. But to my family, especially my mom and my brother Derek, it was all just fluff. "We do real work, Delilah, not sitting around tapping on a keyboard and calling it success." Derek had said that to my face during the only dinner I'd been invited to in the past 3 years. He works in construction. My mom used to be an accountant. To them, my work held no value. I no longer try to change their views. I used to. But every effort to explain, every attempt to share my accomplishments was met with cold dismissal. I once thought I was just being overly sensitive. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they honestly forgot. But the forgetting kept happening. Like my 28th birthday. No calls, no messages. Last Thanksgiving, the whole family gathered at the old house. No one told me. Eventually, I realized the neglect wasn't accidental. "You doing okay, Delilah?" Only one person ever asked me that. My aunt, Isabel, my mother's younger sister. And Isabel was nothing like the rest of the family. She used to live in Boston, worked as a freelance painter, and was the first to congratulate me when I bought my first apartment with my own savings. Not everyone has the courage to live the life they want. She once told me after I shared how Derek mocked me. And sadly, not everyone knows how to respect that. She called me once a month, sometimes just to tell me about her latest painting or to ask if I was sleeping okay. She was the only one in the family who truly saw me. Not through job titles or achievements, but for who I really was. My mom was different. Her voice always carried this air of reluctant obligation whenever she checked in. "Delilah, that job still keeping you around? What if the internet crashes someday?" Or worse. "Derek's about to buy a house, you know. What about you? Still renting that tiny apartment?" I learned to smile, then go silent. Your 20s are supposed to be about growth and discovery. For me, it was a slow, painful journey of trying to please a family that never really wanted to understand me. I used to believe that if I were kinder, more successful, maybe one day they'd accept me. Last year, I sent my mom a photo album from a business trip to San Diego, where I spoke at an industry conference. All she texted back was, "Looks fine." No emojis, no questions, no congratulations. I got used to the empty holidays. Used to my name missing from family group chats. Used to birthday gifts that never arrived. But no matter how used to it I was, there were still nights where that quiet exclusion choked me awake. Over a message that never came. I'm not someone who gives up easily. But after 32 years, I started to realize some doors don't stay closed because you didn't try hard enough. Some were never meant to open for you. I was organizing files on my laptop when the doorbell rang. The delivery guy held a cream-colored envelope, elegant and firm in his hand. "Miss Grant?" "That's me." I signed, closed the door, and opened the envelope. Inside was a wedding invitation, embossed with silver floral designs on thick, high-quality cardstock. The fresh ink smell still lingered, just enough to make my heart race. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Derek Grant and Natalie Boyd, April 20th at Palmetto Garden, followed by an evening reception at Lakeshore View Hotel." I read it over and over. My name was there, the print was crisp, no mistakes. This wasn't a mix-up. Derek, my brother, was getting married. I hadn't known he had a serious girlfriend. No one had mentioned Natalie. No invite to an engagement party. No photos in the family group chat I was never added to. But I was invited. For the first time in years, I wasn't left out of something important. And not just a dinner or birthday, but my brother's wedding. I sat there for a long time, clutching the card like it might disappear. Maybe this was the start of something new. I remembered what Aunt Isabel told me during a recent call. Sometimes it takes a big event for people to find their way back to each other. Maybe the wedding's that chance, Delilah. I decided to believe that. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparations. I spent 2 afternoons trying on guest dresses at a designer boutique downtown. I chose an emerald green gown. Simple, elegant, gently hugging the waist and flowing down like water. Not too flashy, but unforgettable. I booked a hair and nail appointment at my trusted salon, picked a pair of nude heels that fit perfectly, and found a shimmery clutch just big enough for my phone, lipstick, and a few mints. I also prepared a special gift. A custom digital portrait of Derek and Natalie, printed large on wood with a glass-trimmed frame. I commissioned an artist, reviewed every detail until it was perfect. I wanted them to know I wasn't showing up just because I was invited. I was coming with sincerity and grace, like I always had. The day before the wedding, I decided to drive to Aunt Isabel's house in the Bloomington suburbs. Her small wooden cottage sat nestled behind a line of pine trees, peaceful and warm, just like her. I brought the wedding gift box with me, neatly wrapped in white paper and tied with a pale blue ribbon. She opened the door with her familiar smile, her eyes still as bright as ever. Delilah, oh, you look beautiful. Just the fitting, right? I beamed and held up the gift box. I wanted to show you the gift I'm giving Derek. Do you think it's nice? She took the box, gently peeled back the paper, her eyes widening before she slowly nodded. You put so much heart into this. It's beautiful. I sank into the sofa as she brewed tea. The familiar, cozy atmosphere calmed me after weeks of wedding prep. I told her about the dress, the shoes, even how the salon had saved my hair appointment slot. I'm so excited, Auntie, I whispered. I think maybe this time I'm truly welcome. Isabel stood still for a moment, then quietly poured the tea. When she returned, something flickered in her eyes, a hint of hesitation, something unsaid. Before I could ask, she smiled. Tomorrow will be wonderful, and no matter what, I'm always on your side. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension in my chest dissolve. I didn't know why her gaze wavered, but I didn't want to doubt anything. Not now. Because tomorrow I would stand under the spring sun, in a garden full of flowers, watching my brother marry the woman he loved. And for the first time in years, I wouldn't be standing on the outside. The next morning, I woke up early, full of anticipation. Soft sunlight poured through the window of Aunt Isabel's house, like a whisper of a new beginning. I opened my suitcase, took out the emerald green gown, and smiled at how it shimmered under the light. Aunt Isabel was in the kitchen making coffee. You're up early, she said evenly. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. I just want everything to go perfectly today. She paused for a second, then turned to me. Go into the living room. I have something I want you to see. I stepped inside without a word. On the table was a large photo album with a deep brown cover. She placed her hand on it for a moment, hesitating, then pushed it toward me. I sat down, opened the first page, and immediately felt my heart tighten. There was Derek in a navy blue suit, holding Natalie's hand as she stood in a flowing white gown. They were smiling in the middle of a garden. On either side of them were my parents, my grandmother, uncles, aunts. Everyone was there. I quickly flipped through more pages. The reception, group photos, dancing, cake cutting, even aerial shots showing dozens of tables beautifully arranged. My throat closed. What is this? Aunt Isabel sat across from me, her hands gripping a coffee mug. Delilah, please, let me explain. I stared at the album. The wedding already happened? She nodded, regret written all over her face. Last weekend, Saturday. But the invitation said it's today. I know. I froze. You mean I was intentionally given the wrong date? Isabel swallowed hard. I objected. I fought with your mother, but they went through with it. They said you didn't fit the vibe. That they wanted one perfect day, without stress. I tried calling you. I did. But I didn't have the courage to tell you the truth. I stood up, taking a step back as the room seemed to shrink. I prepared. Everything, I whispered. The dress, the gift, the hair, so much hope. Just for them? To humiliate me like this? My voice trembled. She stepped forward to touch my shoulder, but I gently pulled away. I thought this time I was finally accepted, I said, holding back tears. I thought they had changed. She placed a hand over her chest. I'm sorry, Delilah. I didn't know what else to do. I was there, watching you not show up. I kept hoping you'd walk in, but when you didn't, I knew from the start it was all wrong. I was quiet for a long while, then asked softly, why did you still go? Isabel looked down. Because I was foolish. I thought if I didn't go, they'd push you away even more. I thought at least if I were there, I could hold space for you. But I was wrong, I gasped, as if finally surfacing from a long, suffocating dive. Memories rushed in. Every forgotten party, every mocking comment, every look that slid right past me. And now, they had packaged their rejection in thick, expensive cardstock. I gently closed the album. I need to hear this from their mouths, I said, voice calm, almost cold. Delilah. No, Auntie, I cut in. I've been quiet my whole life. Now I need to hear them say it. That they never wanted me there. That this was intentional. She looked at me for a long time. Finally, she nodded. If you're going, I'll go with you. I shook my head. No. This is something I have to do alone. But thank you. For never pretending. I walked out to my car, both angry and aching, but no longer uncertain. What I once feared had now been confirmed. There was no more room for blind hope. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw my silk gown still draped across the back seat. It really was a beautiful dress. But it wasn't meant for a wedding I was never truly invited to. That afternoon, I drove straight to my parents' house in the southern suburbs of Minneapolis. The same 3-bedroom wooden home still sat beneath the old maple trees like always, but today every brick, every window pane felt foreign. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a few minutes to steady my breath. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of a confrontation I'd been avoiding my entire life. As I stepped onto the porch, laughter echoed from inside. Light, carefree. I knocked. A few seconds later, my mother opened the door. Delilah? Her voice pitched upward, her eyes flickered with confusion. What are you doing here? I walked in without waiting for an invitation. In the living room, my father was sitting in an armchair, holding a cup of tea. On the table was a stack of printed wedding photos. Derek and Natalie smiling, hand in hand under white lanterns. Sitting beside him was Derek, still in his dress shirt, chatting with Natalie. She saw me first, her expression freezing. I looked at each person in the room. No one said a word. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. I came here to confirm something that shouldn't need confirming, I said, keeping my voice steady. The wedding happened last week, and my invitation was a deliberate joke. Derek set his cup down and leaned back in his seat, clearly annoyed. Do we really have to do this? He asked, glancing at our parents. I looked straight at my brother. I just need you to answer one question honestly. You never planned to invite me to the wedding, did you? Derek sighed, then shrugged. Yeah, that's right. I didn't want you there. The bluntness hit harder than I expected, but at least it was honest. Why? I asked. He rested his elbows on his knees, looking at me with exasperation. Because you always make things awkward. You don't say much, but somehow you make everyone uncomfortable. Do you even notice that, Delilah? You're like this gray shadow people have to tiptoe around. I swallowed hard. So, you're blaming me for the tension that other people created? My mother spoke up then, her voice cool and detached. Delilah, you don't fit in. No one says it out loud because they don't want to hurt your feelings, but that's the truth. You've always been on the outside, and that forces people to brace themselves when you show up. I turned to look at her, no longer surprised. So, it's my fault for existing in a way this family doesn't know how to handle? Natalie looked down, saying nothing. My father stared into his cup of tea, as if hoping it would turn into an escape route. None of you ever considered that staying silent for years is its own kind of harm? I said, my voice beginning to crack. Derek scoffed. Actually, we were doing you a favor. Imagine how fake it would have been if you showed up and everyone had to pretend to be happy. Would you really want that? You don't get to decide what's best for me, I replied. You weren't the one spending 10 years feeling erased from your own family. My father finally spoke, quietly but awkwardly. We just wanted the wedding to go smoothly. By deceiving me? I cut in. By sending me a fake invitation and then laughing together at the reception when I didn't show up? My mother crossed her arms, her gaze cold. You're making a big deal out of this. It was a wedding, not some global summit. Everyone has the right to invite who they want. I looked at all four of them. A family I had once fought to be part of, had once placed hope in. And now, they had nothing to offer but defensiveness and denial. No apologies, no remorse. I exhaled sharply. Thank you. At least today, I finally got the truth. Not dodged glances or vague excuses. Just brutal honesty. I turned and walked straight toward the door. As my hand touched the knob, I heard Derek behind me. Delilah, if you were smart, you'd understand. We were as gentle as we could be. I turned back, calm. No, you were only gentle with each other. With me, you were never kind. Just calculated in how you pushed me out. And I closed the door behind me. The early spring wind brushed past my shoulders, but I didn't feel cold. I left the house I once called home without looking back. The Minneapolis sky that afternoon was overcast, but inside me, everything felt strangely clear. Not relief, not sadness, just finality. Once I got into the car, I called Aunt Isabel. She answered by the second ring. Delilah? Her voice was soft but worried. I paused for a moment, then said quietly, They admitted it, Auntie. Everything, just like you suspected. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard her breath catch. Are you okay? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'm not falling apart. I'm not even angry. I'm just out of hope. Then you're starting to see things clearly. I smiled faintly. Thank you, Auntie, for always being in my corner. Even if it was just a phone call or a look that didn't flinch. Without you, I probably would have believed I really was the problem. Her voice lowered. Delilah, you were never the problem. You just refused to perform the version of yourself they preferred. I stared out through the windshield and said, with clarity, I think it's time I finally protect myself. For real. 3 days later, I walked into the office of my personal attorney, Catherine Wells, the sharp woman who'd handled my real estate contracts for the past 2 years. She wore a black blazer, hair neatly pinned, eyes as focused as ever. Delilah, is everything all right? She asked, pouring me a cup of tea. I didn't beat around the bush. I want to sever all financial ties with my family. Completely. She paused for a few seconds, studying me carefully. You mean, I've helped them so much, but they've never once been grateful. They never even asked if I was okay. I've been paying my parents' property taxes for 3 years. I quietly funneled money through an anonymous maintenance fund to fix the roof, the pipes, the heating system. All through an LLC I set up under my name. No one ever knew. Catherine nodded, jotting things down. And now you want to shut everything down, close that account, revoke all access, and if possible, I want a legal barrier, a no-contact order. No visits, no letters, no phone calls. What happened, Delilah? I told her everything. The fake wedding invite, the exclusion, the confrontation that chilled like stone. She didn't interrupt, just took notes and occasionally nodded. By the end, she said plainly, "That's grounds for a temporary restraining order. If they keep trying to reach you or cause disruption, we can escalate to a long-term one." I signed the paperwork, my hands steady. For once, I was acting for myself, not to please anyone else. That night, I opened my laptop, logged into the company's bank account, transferred the remaining balance to my personal account, and officially shut down the Grant Trust Fund. The name I once thought represented filial devotion. A week later, Catherine sent me a confirmation file. All paperwork had been filed, the support account was closed, and the no-contact order was active for 30 days. Enough time to gather evidence if an extension was needed. I printed everything out, placed it in a blue folder, and tucked it into my desk drawer. Looking at it, I didn't feel angry. Just clear. A firm boundary. A line no one was allowed to cross anymore. At that point, I realized cutting ties wasn't about retaliation. It was about choosing to stop where I wasn't valued. I was no longer the younger sister trailing behind, hoping to be seen. I was no longer the daughter who always reached out but was never reached back. And finally, I'd learned to put myself first. 1 month after the no-contact order took effect, I received a call from Catherine, my attorney. "Delilah," she said evenly, "we need to discuss the house on Orchard Street." I sat up straight. "Is something wrong?" "No, but it's time you make a decision. On paper, you are the sole legal owner. They've been living there on verbal permission, no lease, no legal right of residency. And right now, the relationship no longer supports that arrangement." I looked at the framed photo on my desk, me and Aunt Isabel at the first gallery I sponsored. Behind our smiles were years of silent endurance and quiet giving. That house on Orchard used to belong to my maternal grandparents. After they passed, my mother inherited it, but due to severe financial trouble, she nearly lost it 3 years ago. I quietly stepped in and bought it through a small real estate company I'd created. All legal, all traceable. They just never knew. I thought keeping that house was a way to protect them. But that was before. "Catherine," I said calmly, "send the notice. They have 30 days to vacate my property." I didn't go alone that day. I brought Catherine and a sheriff's deputy. Just a precaution in case things escalated. I didn't want drama, but I no longer trusted them to be reasonable. Derek's SUV was parked out front. I figured he had just visited. As we stepped onto the porch, the door opened. My father stood there, thinner than I remembered, his hair nearly all white. "Delilah," he breathed my name. "Can we talk?" I nodded, but kept my distance. Catherine handed him the envelope with the official notice. "You and Mrs. Grant no longer have legal rights to reside here," she said firmly. "You have 30 days to vacate. After that, any remaining belongings may be considered abandoned and subject to legal disposal." My mother appeared behind him, her face full of panic. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice rising. "This is my house." "No," I said calmly. "This house belongs to me. 3 years ago, when the bank was about to foreclose, I bought it through my company. You signed the sale, it was notarized. You received full payment. You just forgot you sold it." "We're family!" she screamed, her face flushed. "You're kicking your parents out?" I stayed silent for a few seconds, not hesitating, but making sure they heard every word. Family is what I begged to be included in. Spent my youth hoping to be accepted. But you threw that away. Now I'm just reclaiming what should. Never been given so freely. My father sat down on the porch step, looking lost. "We'll go," he said softly. "Delilah, I'm sorry, but please, give us time." I turned to Catherine. She nodded. "We won't enforce immediate removal, but everything must be finalized within the legal timeframe." I left without another word. 3 weeks later, I received an email from the law office confirming. The house was vacated, no resistance. Keys were mailed back to me. I went to Orchard alone, stood in the living room that once held childhood Christmases, my mother laughing over cookie dough, my father fiddling with the lights, and later, the same room where they so easily erased me from the family picture. I took a deep breath. The memories remained, but they no longer controlled me. For the first time, I truly owned everything. My property, my choices, and my own heart. I was in my office when a message came from the lobby downstairs. "Someone named Grant is waiting for you at the front desk. They say they're your parents." I froze in front of my screen. That message dropped like a stone into the calm lake I had finally found inside myself over the past few weeks. The temporary restraining order had expired 10 days ago. I hadn't renewed it, not because I changed my mind, but because I knew, if they ever came back, I wouldn't need the law to keep them out of my life anymore. I took a deep breath, shut my laptop, and stepped out of my office. The elevator ride down stretched the moment I was about to face. When the doors opened, I saw them. My mother was wearing the old gardening coat. Her hair, once always meticulously styled, was now disheveled and noticeably grayer. My father sat beside her, his face pale, and for the first time, I noticed his wedding ring was gone. I didn't walk over. I stayed at a distance, just enough to hear. "Why are you here?" I asked, calmer than I expected. My father looked up. "Delilah, we have nowhere else to go." My mother stepped toward me, but I held out my hand, stopping her. "We're staying at a motel just outside Brooklyn Center," she said, her voice hoarse. "We can't afford to pay for another week." I didn't respond. They looked at me like strangers. Or maybe, for the first time, it was the truest form of our relationship. "We're family, Delilah," my father said gently. "You've helped before. Maybe you could help one more time?" I looked at them for a long moment. I remembered everything I had done, the wire transfers under my company's name, the property taxes I paid, the roof repairs, the new heater I installed that winter. No one had ever asked who was behind it. They simply accepted it as if it were my duty. "I'm not the family bank anymore," I said softly. My mother frowned. "You're angry, I understand. But don't let temporary anger—" "It's not anger," I cut her off. "It's clarity." I looked her in the eye. "You once told me I didn't belong to this family. Derek said my presence made everyone uncomfortable. So now, please live as if I never existed, the same way you've done for years." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Delilah, we were wrong. I admit it, but life doesn't always give us a second chance." I let out a short laugh, not joyful, just bitter irony. "Yet I gave all of you more than enough chances. I showed up to every dinner I wasn't invited to. I sent greetings that were never returned. I brought gifts to a wedding that, it turned out, wasn't what I believed. And now? I have nothing left to give." Aunt Isabel's words came back to me like a breeze cutting through the heavy air. "If they don't treat you like family, you don't owe them family treatment." I took a breath, then said slowly, "I hope you both find a way to stand on your own. But that no longer has anything to do with me." My mother sobbed. My father looked down, shaking. "Goodbye," I said, turning toward the elevator. Behind me, my mother called my name, her voice fading into a distant echo. That night, I didn't cry. I wasn't sad. I didn't second-guess myself. I made tea, opened the window, and let the spring breeze fill my apartment. The city lights shimmered on the petals of early cherry blossoms drifting down the balcony. One crisp fall morning, I was preparing to present a new content campaign on the 16th floor when my assistant Megan stepped in, holding a phone. "Delilah, someone named Lucy Boyd wants to meet with you. Should I decline?" I paused. It had been so long since I'd heard that name. Natalie Boyd. The bride from the wedding I never attended. The one who saw me at the door and looked away in silence? I thought for a few seconds, then nodded. Schedule her for next Friday afternoon. When Lucy walked into my office, I barely recognized her. Not because she had changed, but because of her eyes. They weren't cold or guarded, just tired. And honest? "I don't even know where to begin," she said, sitting down across from me. "But I owe you an apology." I said nothing, just listened. "After the wedding," Lucy went on, "things started to crack. Derek changed, or maybe I finally saw who he really was. He tried to control everything. He yelled when I disagreed. And when your parents came asking to stay, he screamed at them in front of me." She took a breath. "I've been separated for 3 months. The divorce is in process, and I just wanted to say I regret staying silent when you were cast out. I knew, and I didn't do anything." I looked at her for a long moment. Silence is a choice too. "But I appreciate you coming." She left not long after, and I carried nothing with me. No resentment, no urge to reconnect. Sometimes a quiet apology is the right period at the end of an old chapter. A few weeks later, I was promoted to creative director. After 7 years of quiet work, I finally earned the role I deserved. Not because someone handed it to me, but because I claimed it. Through skill, through sleepless nights, through every time I was underestimated and still showed up, my life became clearer. No more anxiety from texts sent by relatives. No more confusion about having to be the good one in toxic relationships. I bought a new apartment near Lake Harriet, where I could go for morning runs and watch the sunrise shimmer on the water. Aunt Isabel would drop by sometimes, bringing apple tarts and stories about how her paintings were selling better than ever. I no longer felt lonely the way I used to, because I understood something. Loneliness doesn't come from the lack of people, but from being surrounded by those who never truly see you. One October afternoon, I received the 3rd letter from my father. Same slanted handwriting, but this time shorter. "Delilah, I'm still going to therapy, once a week. The doctor says it takes time to untangle what I used to believe was right. But I'm trying. Not to be forgiven, just to understand. Wishing you a good life in your own way. Dad." I set the letter down, unsure whether I should cry or smile. Maybe. Both. I haven't replied to any of his letters. Not because I hate him, but because I'm learning to let things unfold at their own pace. If one day I choose to open that old door again, it'll be because I want to. Not because of filial duty or family expectations. On a chilly evening, I stood on my balcony, watching golden leaves fall one by one onto the street below. The breeze brushed against my collar, gentle, like a quiet reminder that another chapter had ended. I had lived too long in the shadow of waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be loved properly, waiting for someone in the family to say, "You matter." Not anymore. I've built a life of value, not defined by anyone else, not warped by the gaze of those too cowardly to admit I was worthy all along. And one thing is certain, I will never let anyone define my worth again, and I will never be invisible, ever again. Delilah's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest thing isn't forgiveness, it's leaving. In real life, many people cling to rotten ties in search of validation, forgetting that self-worth doesn't need permission. Setting boundaries, protecting your dignity, and choosing to live fully for yourself isn't selfish. It's maturity and liberation. You don't have to stay where you feel unseen. What do you think of Delilah's decision? Should she forgive or keep her distance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories to come.